G'day and welcome to another segment of the Build Me a Brewery podcast. My name is Chris Hayton and we are now moving into our marketing, design and beer media segment. Now, a brewery's brand is so important in a continuously growing and competitive marketplace. As many have learned during this podcast, myself included, brewing beer is only a small part of a brewery's overall operations, and whilst a good quality and consistent product can speak for itself at times, having a well thought out marketing plan on how you're going to ensure your beer is getting into more thirsty beer drinkers' hands is another key aspect, and in my opinion, an often under prioritized focus for a new brewery. In part one of the segment, I talk with a former head of marketing at Ballistic and founder of Four Hearts Brewing, Wade Curtis, to discuss the importance of a brewery having a plan of attack when it comes to their marketing and brand development. Having a career background in marketing, Wade whet his appetite for good beer during a trip overseas in 2001, sampling beers from the UK, Belgium, Germany and the like. His first step into commercial brewing came with doing a test batch at Bacchus Brewing in 2010 and got going this way through the gyspy and contract brewing route. He then went on to open up Four Hearts Brewing and then years later joined the Ballistic guys, taking the role as head of marketing. Thoroughly enjoyed my chat with Wade, who shares an absolute wealth of information as well as industry insider tips and tricks when it comes to product buzz, exposure and brand development. So to open up our first episode of our segment, I'll leave you to my chat with Wade Curtis. Welcome, Wade, to the Build Me a Brewery podcast. Thanks for coming on, mate.
No worries. Thanks for having me.
Just to explain to the audience how we both got in touch with each other, I think you were sort of following us closely on our Facebook page about what we were doing and, talking about your experience with building your own breweries in the past. You've been there, done that, sold shares in breweries and, have sort of moved on to a different career path or slight deviation from what you've been previously doing in the brewing industry and marketing space. But I really appreciate you taking some time to come on and wanting to be involved and really sharing some of your advice and tips around the marketing and sales aspect for a brewery, and sort of a forgotten aspect, I think, probably something that is probably neglected by a lot of breweries starting out. They're so focused on, setting up the brew house, sourcing equipment and going through council and making the brewery and fit out of that look good. But one thing that probably gets overlooked is, how they get their brand out there and engage with local fans for their beer. And I'd really like to sort of dig deep into your experience that you've had in the brewing industry. But just to kick things off, mate, are you able to give the audience a bit of an idea about your craft beer roots and how you got into the brewing industry, mate?
Yeah, I guess so I've always been into beer, I guess, in one way or the other. And I went overseas in 2001 and tried all these different beers overseas. And when I came back to Australia in sort of middle of 2002, I was like, I want to buy all these beers. And I think I found Hoegaarden and it was about $97 a carton. And that was in 2002. And it was tasted a bit tired and everything. And I thought, I'm going to start getting into brewing my own. So that's what really just spurred me on. I mean, when the trip overseas, I went to the UK, Belgium, Germany, Spain, all around the place, and just tried all these different beers and enjoyed the different beer cultures, I guess. So that's kind of whet my appetite to start brewing myself.
Yeah, well, I've done that myself, probably not to the extent of that, probably just more of on a backpacking with mates. But, you hear a lot of stories of other successful brewery owners who've done exactly the same thing. They've gone to the US or they've gone to Europe and just got inspiration that way on all the different beers out there. And it's something that I'd be interested in doing myself. But yeah, I guess, that's the only way to sort of know what's out there. And, we've been monopolized by bloody, your big CUB breweries. And, we're only starting to really see what different beer styles are out there in terms of the Australian market.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my COVID sob story is I was supposed to go to craft beer conference in San Antonio in April with Ballistic, but that got cancelled. So I'd been to the US before, but only very quickly, and spent a bit of time in Canada. But obviously, craft beer wasn't where it is now. So yeah, I was a bit bummed out about missing that, but I probably saved myself a bit of heartache and a couple of kilos, I'd say.
Yeah, no, I've definitely been sinking the beers and upping the home brewing efforts during this whole COVID period. But it's been good. But yeah, you do develop a bit of a beer gut. But yeah, so tell us a bit about how I guess you got into the brewing industry. Obviously, inspired by some of your trips overseas and trying different beers. But how did you sort of dip your toes? What was the sort of first sort of step into the industry for you?
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously home brewing and brewing for mates and stuff. And we used to have Oktoberfest at our house, and I used to brew like 4 or 5 different German beers. And then people started getting a bit of a taste for those beers. And then I had a few recipes I was working on as a bit of a, like my sort of, I guess, hero beers. And so people kept trying them and telling me they liked them. And, I didn't really care whether they liked them or not, to be honest
Yeah.
with you. And then my other career background is in marketing. And so, I saw a bit of an opportunity to craft beer. And so I think it was 2010, I actually got some beer brewed at Bacchus Brewing at Capella Bar, which is a small like brew on premise. They have wholesale license as well, so they brew their own beers. But back then, in 2010, I brewed a test batch there, and then used that. Took a few samples around to a few local pubs, and I just sort of got going like that. So it was very much the contract brewing route, just to get it going and testing the market and seeing what people's feedback. And back then in Brisbane, there was probably about 3 or 4 bars that really had craft beer, and then there was one place in Ipswich, which is near where I live. So yeah, I just got into it like that, and then I did that for probably about 5 years, and then in 2015, I think it was, 2015, I actually opened a brew pub. So I went into partnership with someone. They saw what I was doing and they liked it, and they liked the beer, and they saw an opportunity. They were a landlord and wanted to put a brewery in their space. I went in, and that's when it kind of became my full-time job. So I did it for 5 years in between jobs, dropping off kegs at lunchtime, before work, after work, going to beer events in my spare time, and then made it kind of like basically a full-time career. I quit corporate marketing jobs and did that for about 3 years full time.
Okay. So tell us about your professional roles within the brewing industry, particularly in marketing sales. So a lot of people will know you as, being part of the Four Hearts startup and also Ballistic, which I think they're part of Founders First now. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. They've got a small share in Ballistic. So
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
do a lot of their sales. So that was, yeah.
Yeah. So well, tell us a bit about, I guess, your roles within those two startups.
Yeah, I mean, Four Hearts, I mean, the marketing kind of role that I did, I mean, it was just me. I came up with the concept and got some friends to do the branding. And, I'm not a designer, but I did all the background work and everything. So, I mean, for Four Hearts, it was pretty much me doing everything for, well, most of the time until just before I left. And then we brought on managers and other people like that. But yeah, Four Hearts was all the marketing, all the sales, I guess even like a lot of the concept development around how the brew pub was going to look and what we were going to serve and the pricing and all that sort of stuff. And then I did a little bit of sales repping, selling kegs for Four Hearts, managing work, doing a lot of work with other little breweries. So I guess after Bacchus helped me, I repaid the favour to, Black Hops, Currumbin, Your Mates, Brutal Brewing, which is a small guys that own the Scratch up here at the bar. There's probably more, I can't remember, but yeah. So we just helped people out with the contract brewing, and then at Ballistic, actually started helping them out running their bar in West End, and then that kind of snowballed to opening another bar in Springfield. So that's a full brew pub in Springfield. It's got an 800-litre brewery in it, and I found the site, negotiated a lot of it, and then managed the build. The project manager managed the build, and then staffing, set up, opening, and then running it through pretty much until COVID hit. And then once COVID hit, we shut and basically turned into a takeaway store that sold beer. And then at that point, as you said, Founders First had sort of come on board, and Ballistic got a bit more ranging, and we needed to get a bit more serious with the marketing. So I came on to take over the marketing then. And in that time, we pretty much grew it, from being 2 sites to 3 sites to then getting Queensland ranging on Oak Decks PA, and then national ranging on Hawaiian Haze. So sort of being part of that journey was really awesome, seeing like the normal independent sales channel, but then
Yeah.
also the sales channel with the majors, and I guess what you need to do to kind of compete with in the big guys and get national ranging and what they expect from a support and all that sort of stuff. And yeah, it was really real eye opening, super exciting and interesting from my point of view, from a marketing point of view, because I've done all that sales and marketing stuff right from, me running around, selling kegs all the way through to, national promotions with Dan Murphy's or Liquorland or whatever. So yeah, that's sort of been my role. And with the marketing for Ballistic, it was pretty much everything, the brand stuff, overseeing social. So I had a marketing assistant there as well, which was good. And we had agencies that we used. So, once you get to that level, you can afford to bring other people on board, and you're a bit of a project manager and someone to steer the ship and come up with ideas and follow them through to execute. So, yeah, I was pretty lucky with the role with Ballistic.
Yeah, well, they've gone absolutely massive now. You see them in, definitely down in here in Sydney, and on the southeast side of Australia, you see them absolutely everywhere in bottle shops and so forth. And they actually went through a bit of a rebranding the last 12 months. Is that right?
Yeah, so the core range packaging. So we didn't change anything to do with the logo. We probably changed the look and feel of the cans in particular and the decals, and just mixed things up a little bit with merch. But yeah, well, that was a good project too. And yeah, I mean, it just shows you the importance of branding and of sales. So when we did that packaging changeover, it literally, like, we changed it. We had a big push in trade and educating people about the brand, and we ended up, I think, pretty much doubling sales for the next sort of 3 or 4 months after that, just from changing the packaging. So marketing, it's very powerful. We thought the Ballistic cans, they were this sort of dark greeny blue, and they were very like serious and masculine. And we really wanted to, a lot of the beers were hoppy and fresh and quite tropical, and the branding just didn't reflect that sort of
Yeah.
light, fun kind of feeling we wanted to give for the brand. So we went for a bit more white. We kept some of the traditional colours. We mixed up the packaging so it was a bit easier for people to see on the shelf. And I mean, there's companies out there whose whole job is just about packaging design and the science of consumers and packaging and how they view products on the shelf. So we used a guy in Melbourne to do that. He does co-conspirators, and I think his name is Pocket Beagles. We used him to do the design, and he's like, just gets beer design. So you kind of you got to use some specialists, but yeah, that was an awesome experience getting that done too.
Yeah, I think one thing that I really liked about, I think it's something Ballistic do in their new designs is, especially for a home brewer or people that's really interested in brewing beer, is actually provide a lot of information about, the type of hops, the grain, and the yeast and all that. I think that it was almost like a recipe was put on the can. Was that right?
Yeah, so we changed that actually with the core range, but we'd still do that with the seasonals. And Hawaiian Haze has that Mexican hot chocolate stout. So yeah, that was a bit of a thing. And in fact, if you join, they've got a thing called Ballistic Beer Buds, which is like a private Facebook group. Anyone can pretty much join, but Ballistic has even shared the recipe for Mexican hot chocolate stout on that. It's not. There's a lot of things. Having a recipe is one thing, but brewing it's another. So I think they really don't really mind too much, and it's a massive compliment if people try a beer and then want to brew it.
I had Glenn Wignall from Grifter on in earlier episodes, and he's been pretty generous in the past with sharing recipes with me just via Facebook on how to brew their Pilsner and Pale Ale, and gone to even to the extent of the sort of grain bill percentages and when to chuck your hops in and how long to ferment for. And yeah, it's really amazing how forthcoming people in the brewing community are, even about sharing trade secrets and recipe secrets. So, but yeah, well, I guess that gives the audience a bit of a insight about yourself and your background and experience, mate. And I guess, like I was saying earlier, the main reason I wanted to have you on board was really talk about the marketing aspect for a successful brewery and increasing brand awareness and all the things that people need to consider when it comes to brand identity. So going back to an earlier question I put at you, do you think the marketing and brand development is a consistent weakness or something regularly neglected in the early days for new breweries?
Yeah, look, I definitely do. I don't know if it's neglected. It's probably just not prioritized, I guess.
Yeah.
Because people don't, like, a lot of people that love brewing don't necessarily have that business or marketing experience, so everyone just jumps in and focuses on the beer, and they don't think about the branding and the marketing and all that sort of stuff. And I just think, at the moment, like, marketing is super important for people's brands and their breweries and everything that they're operating, because the market's getting so cluttered now. I mean, if you wanted to open a brewery in around Brisbane, in like inner city, or Sydney inner city or whatever, then you need to have a really clear reason why people should come and visit you, and that's what marketing's doing. And then you've got to get people interested, and then when they get there, you've got to deliver an experience, which is all marketing as well. So yeah, I've got a bit of a philosophy with marketing, and I just, like, because I'm a marketer, I think of everything from a marketing point of view, I guess. So whether it's the branding, like the logo, like, that's one thing. Then the look and feel of the packaging or the decals is another thing you've got to make sure you're across. And then everything from the way your venue's designed, all of those things, the pricing, whether you have food or not, whether you have a playground or not, all these things are about, like, going, all right, what's my brand stand for? Who am I targeting, and who's going to be my key customers? And am I doing all the things I need to do to attract them? And, like, that's so much more than the beer. And then even the styles of beer, like, you see so many. I know I was the same. I used to brew, 6%, 7%, 8% beers. And when I looked at opening a brewery in Ipswich, I went, well, what's everybody drink in Ipswich? It's 4X Gold. I can't open with 6% IPAs. I'm not going to offend people. And, it ended up being the first or second biggest seller in the venue. So, like, for me, marketing is at the roots of everything. I think it's actually easy to brew beer, and it's easy to get good at brewing beer, but it's really hard to nail your marketing. And I guess why I think it is neglected is, you've seen Ballistic, you've seen Akasha, you've seen, like, I don't know, Modus Operandi. All these people have come out, and after 2 or 3 years, they're rebranding and changing because they realised how important it was, and they didn't do a great job of it when they first opened. So yeah, it's interesting. And, like, even Four Hearts, when I opened Four Hearts, about 2 years later, we did concepts to rebrand and change the logo, because the old logo was just a bit shit.
Yeah, yeah.
It's just the way it is.
You hear about people redoing things like expanding their brew house, or expanding the actual physical brewery in the first couple of years, because they didn't plan to be as big as they were in 2 years' time. And you're the first to actually say it from the marketing perspective. People not allocating enough money towards a good marketing plan or strategy, and making sure that there's brand consistency. And what you're saying is, a lot of these big craft breweries now are starting to look at rebranding, because they obviously didn't pay much attention to it, or didn't dedicate enough resources to it from the very beginning. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's a certain quirkiness of a small brewery when you first open. Maybe you can only get the cans from the brewery, or maybe they're just in a few local bottle shops. And I think some of the little quirks about the brand are charming at that point. But then once you start, even if you're ranged in a local BWS, you're on the shelf, and then you kind of realize how bad you are, because you look up your brand against all these other brands, especially the national brands or bigger craft brewers, and you just look at it and go, well, if I was coming in here and I knew nothing about craft beer, being the local brewery is probably not enough. You need to look at the part as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think I recall an episode with I can't remember. You might be able to answer for me. The head marketing guy, one of the founders of Bolter, he was on the Black Ops, one of their episodes, talking about how they wanted to differentiate their branding and their packaging when it comes to how it looks on a shelf. They see the nice smiley faces and the subtle colors of the white and blue, or white and yellow, and it just looks really nice lined up on a bottle shop's fridge or fridge shelf.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Sterling is the guy's name, and yeah, he's a pro at branding, that's for sure.
Yeah, well, he came from background working in surfing, with Billabong.
Yeah, I think it was Quicksilver or something like that. But yeah, definitely.
Quicksilver, yes, sorry.
They're good masters of branding.
Yeah. Well, look at what they did with it. So, but yeah, so
Absolutely.
obviously you've talked about it's not always thought of at the very early stages of a brewery starting out, the marketing aspect. But why is marketing and a brewery's brand so important?
Well, I mean, marketing is, that consumer perception is what people think about your brand, and that obviously is going to translate into whether or not they buy it, and whether or not they feel safe in your venue and all those sorts of things. So for me, I mean, like when a million years ago when I did my marketing degree, I think there was 4 Ps. I think there's probably more now because people love making that stuff up. But,
The
you've got
acronyms,
product, you've got price, you've got place and distribution, and then you've got promotion. And so many people just think marketing is about promotion. It's just about your social media page or your web page or whatever. But it's about so much more than that. It's about the personality of your brand. People that have done it really good, and it looks like they haven't put a lot of thought into it, but I know they have, is someone like Your Mates Brewing. Like, they've created this really strong brand identity. They're just laid back people from the coast, and that's what their brand's all about. And you look at a lot of different breweries that have differentiated themselves. I mean, there's a lot of breweries out there whose brand story is me and a mate, or me and 2 mates or 3 mates or whatever decided we wanted to brew beer in our backyard, and now here we are with a big brewery. And I mean, that is a cool story, and it was cool when Black Hops did it because there wasn't many other people doing it. But now, like, everybody's done it, and it's not enough to be, like, you couldn't open on the Gold Coast and say we're a Gold Coast brewery and it's 3 mates, because that positioning's already taken. It's kind of, you've got to start putting a bit more thought into it and what your I guess marketing proposition is to your customers. So, and that really starts with having a decent marketing and a proper strategy plan. So starting all the way from who your target market is, and then understanding what do they want, what beers are they already drinking, where do they go to drink, what other things are they into, are you going to align by sponsoring local things or sponsoring other things that are going to attract those people, or at least show that you have the same values as those people. So, and then the beers, as I said, the beers then flow from that. It's like, what beers do those people want to drink? Do they want heavy metal music, or do they want to listen to Jack Johnson? Do they want a playground, or do they hate kids, so don't cater to kids? It's all those sorts of things. Like, every single, like, as much effort as you put into perfecting your beer recipe, you need to put into your marketing plan and your product strategy to really nail it, so that at least when you open, you know exactly who you are and you're not going to be confusing to people. Because if you open one way and then act another, then people are going to go, well, we went there, it was really weird. Like, it looked like it was going to be really cool and hip. And when we got there, it was, we were sitting on, shitty plastic chairs that they got from Bunnings and, all that. Like, every single decision you make in your business that is customer facing needs to be, you need to be thinking about how that's going to make you look and how your brand's going to be perceived off the back of that. And I really just don't think anyone thinks of things like that. And you really are. I mean, it's a pain in the bum, because a lot of the time you've got to develop up a product strategy. So what beers you're going to do, how you're going to price them, who you're going to sell them to. But then, because a lot of breweries, especially now, their model is that they're also a hospitality business. So then you've got all the issues you've got to deal with hospitality, and thinking, my toilet's going to be clean enough. There's no point having couples come and having the women, not like the clean toilet, or the dirty toilet and all that sort of stuff. So, like, there's all these minute details that you need to understand from a hospitality point of view, as well as a marketing point of view, and they're all going to create, then you've got your reviews on Facebook, how you're going to deal with that when someone shit cans your baby and says, like, oh, I went there and, they didn't put much time and effort into developing up the venue, and you've spent all the money you've had and all the spare time you had doing it. You've got to think about how you're going to react to that now. That's going to make your brand look and all those sorts of things. So it really is complicated. And then you're throwing in dealing with the public and humans and social media. And there's been so many examples of just that poor management of those tools as well. And just, people firing up at bad reviews and all that sort of stuff. So, yeah. And I guess, if you don't have the skills to do it or you don't know how to do it, there's a lot of people out there and there's a lot of websites out there. And I guess there's going to be podcasts like this that you can listen to and try and get that knowledge. But the one thing is, like, people that do it really well, you just go in there and you go, man, this is a real slick operation. It doesn't even have to cost that much. It's just about doing the basic things and understanding, I guess, who you are as a business and who you want to be as a business and how you want people to perceive you as a business. And there's a million different ways of doing that. I guess the big trap that people fall into is they just think everybody's like themselves. So I like Tool and 7.5% red IPAs, but I didn't open a brewery that just brewed those things and we didn't play that music. I played it while I was brewing, but my target market didn't want to listen to Tool, so I didn't.
Oh, mate, I'd be there in a heartbeat if you were playing Tool. One of my favourite bands, actually.
I know. Well, I did actually toy with just opening like a dad bar, so it's just IPAs and 90s, early 2000s sort of metalish kind of music. So yeah, maybe that'll happen one day.
There's some of the ideas that float around in my head because I'm a massive grunge fan, and I'm living in the 90s with my music, and yeah, like I said, Tool's an absolute, probably my number one in regards to bands. So yeah, and that's what I like to transfer into my brewing as well. The brewery experience is when people come and try the beers. Yes, they're enjoying the taste of the beers and all the variety, but I'd like to have a music element as well, and people, because that's something that's sort of that's lacking definitely in my area in Sydney, is just venues. When I say Sydney, Western Sydney is just having venues with good craft beer and having, someone with an acoustic and coming and playing, just that sort of vibe. It's we've got big clubs out here, big RSLs, big leagues clubs, and they just lack character. And, I'd love to have a place that has character and, and has that almost like a British vibe or an Irish vibe. People love that sort of thing. And, you just come and you sit in these tables and there's a Keno bloody playing on the TV and pokies to the left here and shitty bistro food, and I want to offer something a lot more than that. And I know it's a lot of work, but, there's a lot of breweries in Sydney that do that really well, and a lot of people can take from that. But you're absolutely right. It's much more than just the beer. It's how you perceive what your brand is to people that will make them want to be part of it and drink your beer and come to your brewery, and it's an experience rather than just coming, grabbing a takeaway and having it at home,
Yeah, and I think you've just reminded me on something. So, I mean, part of your strategy needs to be like a review of competitors, and so those competitors aren't just other breweries; they're other options for entertainment, right? So if someone goes to a brewery, a lot of people just aren't. Well, maybe one person out of the four is going there because they love beer. The other three in the group are going there because they want to go somewhere different. They want to try something new. They want to feel cool and hip because they're going to like a little craft brewery. So you've got to look at the competitor offerings, and that's why I love the suburbs, because the suburb that you just described is like the suburb outside of every capital city.
Yeah.
ALH, big clubs, just shittiness and no real experience. And so, I mean, that's why I opened in Ipswich, one, because I lived in the area or close to the area, but I knew there was no competition. We were the only show in town for like 18 months. And everybody was saying, like, oh, you're so lucky and, all this. And it's like, well, no, it's not luck. It's the fact that we knew the area. We knew there were people that wanted a good experience that were going into the city. And we gave them exactly the same experience, probably even sometimes better, but they didn't have to travel anywhere. And now with Uber, when we opened Springfield with Ballistic, everyone was saying, it's only a $5 Uber. I can come, eat and drink as much as I want, and then $5 home, because there was really nothing else in the area. A couple of other pubs, but they catered to a different market. But for someone that loves craft beer, or even just good music, or, I think you've got to think also about what other products you're going to sell and what sort of license you want, because a lot of people want to drink cider or gin and tonic or whatever. If you're just a brewery with a producer wholesaler license like we've got in Queensland, well, then you can't serve a lot of those things. You can only serve what you produce on site. So it's really important. You kind of work out your market and you work out who's going to be coming, and then the products you've got behind the bar, they might not just be beer. they've got to have other things. And then even, whether you want Coke or organic cola or whatever, they're all decisions that you need to make with your target market in mind. But yeah, I'm a massive fan of the suburbs. I think there's still so much opportunity, and probably I reckon that if you've got a population of about 100,000 people, you can probably support a brewery. And so that means you can go into a lot of regional areas as well, provided the market's there, there's the right type of people there. But yeah, the positioning of where you are, how you fit in the competitive landscape, I think is really important. But in saying that, there's also benefits of being in a hub or another like a hospitality precinct, or I still think you'd be super brave to open in the inner west of Sydney. I don't know if that market is saturated, but maybe that's if you just played Tool, you might get enough people to come. But I don't know about inner west, but definitely in the suburbs for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned earlier about having a good marketing and product strategy plan in an earlier statement. And I recall sitting down with Pete from Wayward, and he mentioned on that episode that it's more important to have a good marketing and product strategy plan than it is to actually have a business plan in general. Well, actually, marketing and product strategy form part of your business plan, but he put it up there as one of the most important things and absolute musts that every brewery should have. Can you go into a bit more detail as to what he meant by that, and what your sort of take on what a good marketing and product strategy plan is?
Yeah, well, I think when I started Four Hearts, I was a bit the same, right? So I just had pretty much marketing, product strategy, and then the business plan really just had tacked onto that some information about who the business partners were, and then the financials, so capital set up and then operating forecasts. So the marketing and product stuff really was at the heart of it. There's a lot that goes into that. You've got to outline who you are and what you want to be. So I guess even if if that's the point, you need to be sitting down and mapping out, I guess, your vision and your mission. And I've done it with a couple of smaller breweries where sort of spent 3 or 4 hours just going through with them and saying, well, what do you want out of the business? What do you want it to be? Are you just starting it to sell it? Are you starting it because you want it to, pass it down to your kids? Are you starting it because you want $100,000 a year profit and you pay yourself a wage, or, what are all your motivations around it? And then you can create a bit of a vision of who you are and what you want to be, which I think is really important because, a lot of people just think it's super easy to just put your beer in cans and flog it. Whereas it's really hard. So you need to be thinking through your business model as well. So are you a tap room with a little bit of wholesale? Do you just want to package beer to sell direct to customers, either online or from your venue? Or do you want to start moving into bigger wholesale distribution? And that's going to drive a lot of what you do. If I had my time over again, I'd start, a little brew pub, 200 people, something like that. And it would have a kitchen and pay me a decent wage, but it wouldn't be too much stress and drama, and it'd just kind of tick over in a suburban area. But, I think the time for people opening large production breweries is, unless you've got probably about $3 to $5 million and investors that are willing to stump up more if you need it, I wouldn't even worry about trying to become a national craft beer brand. I think you'd even struggle to become a statewide craft beer brand, because to do that, you've got to deal with the big guys. And once you do that, you need pretty deep pockets and be prepared to take a bit of a hit on your margins. So I guess you need to be thinking about all that sort of stuff in your plan. And then, competitor analysis, your own SWOT analysis. So what you think you're going to be good at versus, what are opportunities, what are threats, what are your weaknesses? And that's really helpful too, because if you really got to be honest with yourself and identify all your weaknesses and know, oh shit, I can't draw and I can't use Illustrator, I better find a graphic designer to do my logo, because otherwise it's going to look crap. All that sort of thing. And be really honest with yourself about, well, do you have the skills to do social media? Do you understand enough about how it all works? One of the things I don't think anyone starting up on a budget could really afford to do to pay someone to do social media, and you have to kind of do it yourself to be authentic. I mean, I did Four Hearts pretty much the whole time I was there, and it was kind of like me speaking, but in the end it became Four Hearts, the brand, speaking kind of thing, because we grew our page to like 25,000 people on Facebook, and so we had a huge audience and people really into what we do, and so there's all those sorts of things. And then I guess you need to think through the product, like your innovation strategy. So what are your beers going to be, and what are you going to use crazy beers to get any PR or media? So like at Four Hearts, I did a carrot beer in conjunction with a local carrot farmer, and it went nuts. I was on the Today Show, I was on the project, I did all this stuff because we did something a little bit different, and we were the first kind of people to take, the carrots they couldn't sell, juice them, and then put them into a beer. I mean, the beer wasn't really that great, but it did the job from a PR point of view.
Yeah.
So, like, there's all those. You've just got to think through all the different strategies. And PR and local media is really, really important too, because they're the people that are going to care. Unfortunately, now there's not many local papers, so you have to kind of work the social media angle and websites and that sort of stuff to get that traction. But, communication plan is really important. So what are your key channels going to be, and are you going to pay for an ad somewhere, or, are you going to join or sign up to Crafty Pint or Brews News to communicate to people, like thinking through all your different channels, whether or not you're going to do some paid digital marketing as well. So, yeah, I mean, there's heaps of different things online. And I think one thing I would recommend is joining up the American Brewers Association, Craft Brewers Association, I think it is.
Yep.
Because on there is all I think it was $150 to join as an associate member, and on there is all this stuff about what you need to do before, like, to set up a brewery, the marketing plan. There's health and safety stuff. That's a really good resource, because you can pretty much guarantee, like, the US is 10 years ahead of us. So many breweries over there have been there, done that.
Yeah, well, I might grab some of the links for you, some of those that you suggested. Brewers Association, I'm aware of. Yeah, they've got some great content that they share, especially on LinkedIn, actually, is where I follow them. But yeah, that's interesting that about the paid membership and all the content and publications you can get from them. And yeah, great. And I guess just following on from, the earlier question about marketing and product strategy plans, can you talk a bit more about the different aspects, I guess, a brewery owner should be considering when it comes to the various methods or tactics that they can use when it comes to marketing and sales? I know you touched on social media and so forth, but I know that there's much more than social media, and a lot of people are getting into the content marketing, like writing blogs and I know the Black Ops guys, relied really heavily on not just their podcast, but also providing a lot of good content about, the cost of what beer is to make. But I know that there's all these other things like brand ambassadors and so forth. But tell us, I guess, in your experience, all the different methods that a new brewery can use in the early days.
Yeah, I think, and I'll sort of focus on, like, being on more of a budget, because obviously, a lot of new breweries can't afford to take giant billboards and all that sort of stuff. But I mean, I think a lot of it starts right back. So for me, a lot of it starts with developing up, I guess, your name, your brand story, and your logo. So that's like, that's the thing you got to do right up front. And if I was opening a place, I would, like, the moment I signed the lease and I was, ordered the equipment, I'd be working on that stuff. So get that done early and upfront, because then you're going to have to, like, the earlier you can get, like, your social media pages set up and make business cards, the better, because that's sort of you, like, putting a stake in the sand and say, all right, we're coming. And once you do that, we're coming kind of marketing, whether that's digital, whether that's announcing it to through PR, through the local news organization or whatever, or getting that first story on Crafty Pint or Brews News or whatever, like, that's you claiming, I guess, your territory. And a lot of people will come on board in that area, and then nearest brewery might have been, 30 Ks away. Now they've got a local brewery and they're going to be just itching to get their hands on your beer. So engaging, like, that community early up is super important. I think then doing all the little things like, making everybody in the community aware of what you're doing, like local councils. A lot of those local councils have tourism associations, which is a huge resource, and you can go along and you can meet and talk to people. The one thing I would definitely do, I would contract brew a batch or work out a way of how you're going to brew beer to get it into people's hands, and even trying to get it on at local venues. So I found that once I told a lot of local venues I was opening up a brew pub, they didn't want to stock my beer because they thought I'd be a competitor, and I was. But so you've just got to maybe work with a friendly pub to do a launch. You might do a launch night and say, right, this is what we're doing, and share your plans and your designs. And I think the biggest thing you can do is just talk to a lot of people and be super open. I don't think there's any real benefit in being super coy about what you're doing. I mean, Black Hops is the opposite of that. They just told everybody everything.
Yeah.
Whether or not you got the time or you got the right personality or skill set to do that, I think is probably pretty important. Starting up some smaller, like, closed groups. Like, so Black Hops have got Black Hops Ambassadors, which is a Facebook page where they share a little bit more sort of in detail stuff. And I think that's where shareholders and a few different people might congregate. But yeah, it's about like getting that engagement up front. I also would engage any local home brew clubs, get them on board, because they're going to love what you're doing and probably be some of your best customers. I always offer to host the home brew clubs in the area, give them free rooms, let them pretty much do whatever they want, because I guess they're like-minded people. Half the people in a home brew club want to do what you'll be doing. So they'll
exactly,
be your friend, and they'll want to pick your brains, and they'll want to support you. I mean, some of the best people I've met have been through home brew clubs, and they're more than happy to help you and do all those sorts of things. So, like, it definitely starts early, and you've got to engage the community, join Chamber of Commerce, tourism bodies, meet people, talk to people, go around and visit anybody you think is going to be a potential customer, go around and have a chat to them. When you're opening in that period, you've got a little bit of downtime, although a lot of people are kind of still working their day job or whatever. And then, just keep the feeds coming out on social media. I mean, that's really going to be the main thing. And like the content, like, spend a bit of time and effort around doing videos of the sites. You might do a bit of a before and after. You might do you talking to everyone, introducing yourself, posting that, and then trying to get like a lot of communities have community pages, so getting them to share a lot of your content as well. And then just looking at hospitality and how a lot of the other venues are marketing themselves and looking at their channels as well. And yeah, I mean, PR it depends on the area, but it's always helpful. Finding influential people in the community or in that target group that you're looking for and giving them beer is always a classic. So if you've got a group of people that you're targeting, give the president of the local footy club or whoever you're targeting free beer, and they'll love you forever, and post it and tell everybody, oh yeah, I tried that beer, it was really good, I can't wait for them to open. So that's the sort of stuff. I think a lot of that's like 6 months before you even launch. So getting that out there, and then once you do launch, you've got to be super, like, it's got to be an hour of your day. You've just got to dedicate to keeping your socials up to date, working on other marketing ideas. If you're opening a brew pub, then you've got to be thinking about, do we need a Wednesday special? Do I need a Thursday special? How am I going to drive midweek traffic? If I'm selling my beer wholesale, I'm going to be thinking about, what sort of offers I want to give. Am I going to do a 10+1 deal on cartons? A lot of what people forget when they first open is merch. Everybody loves merch, and they'll buy it and they'll pay good money for it, and they're basically a walking billboard. So make sure you've really worked through the merch as well. That's kind of like a channel in itself. And yeah, make it easy for people to sample your product. So tasting paddles are the biggest pain in the ass. As someone that's worked behind a bar, I hate them. But customers love them, and they're going to try all 5 of your beers or 6 or however many you've got on, and they're going to find one that they like. If you're behind the bar yourself as the brewer pouring it, they've just had this like amazing experience around this beer that they're then going to go and tell all their friends about, and they're going to say, oh, well, they did a stout, but I don't really like stouts. But, they did a pale ale, and I don't normally like pale ales, but this one was amazing because the brewer told me that he squeezes virgin's tears into the tank at the end of the ferment or something, It's just that's the experience that you're selling. And when you're a small operator, you're selling yourself and the experience and the venue, and you've just got to think about that. Like when I opened Four Hearts, I worked like 100 hours a week because I was brewing the beer, working the bar, doing the marketing, just insane amount of work, because you have to be present in your business, because people want to come to a place that has a personality and a soul. And if they can talk to the owner, and as an owner, you're the one in there who gives a shit and is looking after them and just doing stuff like, oh, I've got this beer in the tank, come and try that. Like, that's the experience in the venue.
Yeah.
And it's tiring and hard work. And I'm not a massive people person, and if you're not a people person, like a lot of people that get into brewing are from, IT or engineering, and don't take any offense if you're in those industries, but normally they're not the biggest people. But, you've got to just put yourself out there, and that is half the battle. If people don't like you, they won't like your venue and they won't like your beer. And then the other thing is, I think you've really got to look at a lot of your personal feelings. You need to taper a bit, especially with the politically correct world. So you've just got to personally, in social media, I stay away from any remotely political or controversial topics, unless it's part of your core brand and that's who you're appealing to, which is like Spark Brewing in South Australia. All their beers are about different causes and things. But I would just social media is just a dangerous place when you start talking about political issues, and even gambling, horse racing, that sort of stuff. You've probably seen it on a lot of sites, but there's a black list of stuff I just wouldn't talk about as well. So you've got to be really clear on what those things are and how you're going to let people interact with you in the media as well. So yeah, it's a massive effort, and I was lucky because all that stuff just came naturally to me. And I'd been working on it for 5 years as well, but that was the benefit of contract brewing and gypsy brewing, is that I could just slowly work all this stuff out. Plus I had a marketing background, but if you don't have a marketing background, half of what I said you probably don't even realize, you don't even understand. And then you've got to have the ability to execute it in a way that works for your brand. So it is pretty tricky, but it's not rocket science. I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that don't have marketing capability and just be themselves and do really well.
Yeah. Just continuing on with some of the, the different methods, or I guess maybe we call them guerrilla marketing type methods that can be done. I was listening to a podcast the other day. It's a US podcast, and for anyone interested in listening to it, it's called Market the Brew. I don't know if you've heard of that before, Wade, but it's basically
I haven't heard of that one.
Just some guys that are really passionate about marketing in the brewing industry, which is obviously very niche. And they've done a podcast, and they had some brewers on and talking about it. It can do a lot to your brand in the early days to do beer collaborations with other breweries.
Yeah, I think other breweries is pretty cool. But the other thing that I've done in the past is actually doing collaborations with customers or sporting groups, or even the home brew club and all that sort of stuff. So that's a cracker. The other thing is supporting local charities and events and getting local musicians. So anything that's really local, you'll engage with the core group, but then that core group will also bring all their friends. So I've done fundraising events where there was one group and it was a trivia night, and then everyone brought all their friends because they were trying to raise money for something. I can't even remember what it was, but that sort of stuff. And then local musicians, if you give a local musician a break and let them play in your venue, just make sure they're good first. But they will bring 10, 20, 30, 40 of their friends because this is their first gig and they want support. And all those people are going to spend 30 or 40 bucks in your venue. So there's a lot of different things that they'll engage people, but they'll also give you a return on that investment. And I mean, it's just being a good local person and a member of the community is a lot to just drive that engagement. But yeah, I mean, any charities, you don't even have to give that much money. You can give a venue voucher or something like that and donate it to the charity. Ballistic, we raised over 20 grand for bushfires just by engaging our local community and staff chipping in and helping out. And that brought so many people into the venue that we just raised more money, and we donated pretty much most of the profits from that to the bushfires. But doing those sorts of things, and the more local it is, the better. That's probably be the biggest way of doing it. And it's not really guerrilla marketing. It's just that local community engagement. I can't really think of too many what I'd call guerrilla marketing. I mean, it starts to look like you're getting a little bit desperate if you're sort of
Yeah.
forcing your brand out there too much.
Yep.
Like it's not like you're KFC, and if Red Rooster sponsors the cricket, you just give everybody a KFC hat or a blow up ball to take to the cricket. Like that's the kind of guerrilla marketing stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I don't know about too much of that stuff, but definitely, like, I think engaging local customers is like, that's to me like just the basic stuff of what you got to do.
Maybe my sort of definition of the word guerrilla marketing is, I look at it more as, cost-effective type methods, things that are either, you can do for free if you've got the time and skill set to do it. And because a lot of people listening are probably looking at their budget and, it's this shoestring type budget of and not much for marketing. So I think I'm looking at more, guerrilla marketing, cost-effective ways to sort of get your brand and product out there in people's hands. But just finishing off this sort of segment on the importance of marketing within a brewery, sales points for breweries. So are you able to discuss, I guess, some of the different sales points that brewery owners, should be exploring to maximize beer sales? Any out of the box things that the average person might not be aware of?
Look, I think, when you're approaching potential customers, I think there's still some mileage, especially if there's not many other breweries around in your local area, is to play the local guy having a crack kind of card. Like, people seem to really respond to that, which is not making anything up. Most people are local guys having a crack when you open a brewery. So it's still being authentic and genuine. It's just actually, I guess, being a bit more upfront about, like, hey, I'm launching this brewery and I'd love your support. And you just always look at like reciprocal arrangements. So if you can support someone, like the easiest thing, and people love this too, I'm like, if you're a brewery, you're probably going to have a pretty good following on social, and you're going to have good engagement anyway. So giving those people that you're supplying to a shout out, if you're selling your beer into somewhere, then give them a shout out on your socials. Out of the box stuff, I think collaborations is probably the best thing. I mean, how many bars out there want to have a beer that they had a hand in brewing? They might struggle to get your beer on tap, but you'll definitely get a beer they brewed on tap. So, working through those kind of ideas, just that whole collaboration thing and working together is probably the biggest thing. And I mean, my biggest thing is definitely, when you're a small brewery, don't discount. You might think you have to. You don't need to sell that much volume to make it worthwhile. So just keep looking until you find customers that find value in your product, rather than you having to force it on them. Because if you have to force it on them, you're probably not going to be very good at selling your product anyway. Whereas if they love what you're doing and they want to embrace you and support you, then everyone that walks into that bar, they're going to say, I've got this new local beer on tap. You've got to give it a try. They're opening down the road. And that will happen all the time. So I don't know. That's not really that out of the box, but it's just brew a carrot beer or something, maybe, if you want to be out of the box.
Yeah, well, funny you say that. I think it was on the news about I don't know which brewery was doing it, but a new avocado beer. And it's
that happens like once a year, I think.
Does that? Yeah, it got picked
the
up by
avocado
mainstream
beer
news.
seems to pop up.
Yeah. But when I was, I guess just back on the sales points, I guess what I was wanting to steer with that angle was, obviously there's in your bottle shops is a sales point, in your cellar or tap room, that's the sales point, and your biggest sales point in terms of margin. Then you've got large distributors, but with COVID, I've noticed that a lot of people have been quick to adapt to creating their own online store on their website. To they might have a delivery van, and within a certain radius of their brewery, they're able to deliver fresh beer directly from the brewery to a customer that's been online that wants a case or a mixed case or something like that. Can you talk about some of the things that that breweries are doing these days that are slightly different to the traditional methods of just Dan Murphy's, BWS, and independent bottle shops?
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing we did at Ballistic with COVID was we just created a drive-through, but we just let people drive through the bar and in the brewery, and because it's a warehouse, you'd actually drive in and around.
Oh yeah,
and
nice.
do that, and so you pull up next to the bar, and order your beer. And that was because of COVID. But yeah, I mean, even like those sorts of things, if you can do it, like the old school drive-throughs, like I don't know where you can go now where there's a pub that has a drive-through bottle shop. But anyway, a few other little things that are really good for engagement is a lot of barbers will give out a beer, or I don't know if they charge for it, but they're allowed to give a beer as part of their service. So
right.
Barbers are a good one. That's in Queensland. Everyone's probably got their own liquor licensing law, but I know that barbers and hairdressers can give out alcohol as part of their service. Yeah, even places like do like pampering and massages. So everyone gives you a glass of champagne. Do a deal, like I did a deal for Father's Day with the local massage therapist, not parlour, and they had a Father's Day dad's pamper package, and you got a beer while you're in having a soak or something, and then you got a voucher to spend in the brewery. So doing some of that stuff, we sold the beer to them, and then they sold it. The other thing in Queensland you can do is florist, so you can put together a beer K, not a bouquet. So you might have a beer K where people can buy it as like a gift, and gift vouchers on your website are epic at Christmas and Father's Day. All that sort of stuff. So, yeah, I mean, I don't love online sales because as a small business and a one-man band, it's a huge amount of work to pack it up and then take it to the post office. And I think you'd want to be trying to sell full cartons or a mixed carton or something to make it worthwhile. But then when you're at that small size, your carton cost is going to be like $90 to the customer. So it's getting up there, and a lot of people don't like spending more than sort of $60 on a beer purchase. So, some of those smaller, more niche areas, and then small restaurants are really good. If you can be, one of the 3 or 4 beers they've got in there, either on tap or they've got in bottles, then obviously you're going to get a good share of their market. I wouldn't want to go into a place that has 10 different beers because you're just not going to turn over. But yeah, a lot of small restaurants are quite good, and they're usually more intimate and, owner operator. So you're going to get a better experience through to your customer. And then if you're in an area, outside of town, you might have a civic centre or some sort of an event space, local clubs. Like we sponsored Ballistic, a lot of local clubs. Part of them being if they had a liquor license, they would stock our beer. We'd sell it to them at a discount, but we still get another sales point. So all that sort of stuff is good because everybody, when they finish a game of soccer or footy or whatever, wants to have a beer. You're getting the can in the hand, plus you're also sponsoring them or whatever, giving back to the community. So, yeah, they're kind of like the different ideas that I've kind of seen and done around the place.
Yeah. Well, and I think another one was I've seen some breweries doing like a VIP or rewards type program of people that I know you were talking about don't discount your beer, but people that are maybe brand ambassadors or loyal customers, and they get some sort of early access to new products or maybe seasonals or limited editions, and having like I guess a loyal fan following who have a sort of a membership. And have you come across that much in your comings?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, from my own personal experience, I joined up as a company in Ballarat, and when I was at Ballistic, we did a collab with them, and they were really great people doing a lot of barrel-aged beers called Dollar Bill.
Yep.
And they do what they call the Royal Oak Society, so they did it a limited edition. It's a good little cash flow idea too. So you sign up for 12 months. I think it was $320, and that includes the freight, and then they send me a certain amount of beer every quarter. And some of those beers are beers that no one else, unless other than people who are in the Royal Oak Society or Rare Oak Society, I think it's called, can get. So there's a little bit of exclusivity. They got my $320 up front. They're committed to brewing all these different beers and making me feel special and sending them up. But, they're putting that money in the bank now to help them finance their business as well. So doing something like that, but you've got to do something pretty special. And you've also got to have a bit of a reputation. Like I wouldn't have signed up to their club unless I tried their beers. I tried their beers up in one of our bars, and they were absolutely amazing. So I went, look, for $320, no one else is doing that quality of barrel-aged beers locally, so I'll sign up for theirs. And Boat Rocker do a similar thing, Wildflower, but they're the more interesting beers. The best club thing I've seen is probably Stone and Wood or Bridge Road. Have a look at what they do.
Yeah.
But those guys, I don't think, are making a lot of money out of their clubs. They're doing it more as a brand engagement kind of piece.
Yep. Okay. Excellent. Well, there's some absolute great takeaways there, mate. There's a long list there for people to sort of, look at, and ones that I've never even thought of. I've never thought of you could get a beer while you get a haircut, or a cut at the barbers, and even a beer at the local masseuse. So there's some great ones there. Just I guess moving on to industry insights. You've been in the brewing industry for quite some time, and you've done all different aspects in terms of equipment sourcing and starting up your own breweries and being that main man in the marketing space for it. Love to hear your thoughts on, I guess, the future of the industry in Australia, and maybe a bit about beer trends, where you see certain beers that might end up being the next big thing, and maybe things holding back the industry, or things that maybe can better improve for new entrants to enter the market.
Yeah, okay. I think the future of the industry is still really good. I've been involved in it for 10 years pretty much, and there's a lot of people doing it before me. And I think in some areas there's saturation, in some channels there's saturation. Like, I don't know how you could compete having national ranging in Dan Murphy's without having pretty large marketing and discount budget, because you've got to be on promotion and all that sort of stuff. And I wouldn't want to try and compete in that space unless I had, $500,000 to $1 million in marketing that I could spend, pretty much, because otherwise your beer's just going to get dusty and go out of date. So I think from that point of view, there's some areas that have got saturation. As I said before, the area I think where there's just massive opportunity is suburban brew pubs, and flicking the pubs and clubs and competing with them on your actual experience. I think there's probably still, you probably still do a little tap room with a food truck as well. I just don't think there's as much opportunity in that space, because people are looking for an experience, and food trucks are kind of cool, but I don't know, they're a little bit limited. And if you really struggle to cater to dietary requirements and, vegan, vegetarian, gluten-free, dairy-free, all that sort of stuff. So my big sort of area, if I had $1 million to invest in the craft beer market, I'd be building a suburban brew pub surrounded by shitty ALH or sports clubs. And that's where I think, provided you got the right demographic, that's where I still think there's a lot of opportunity. And I think there's even opportunity in regional areas too, provided you don't overcapitalize and invest too much. There's probably is still opportunity in those smaller regional areas. And we're seeing it up here with Toowoomba, people in Bundaberg and, Cairns and all that sort of stuff. Like, they do have a reasonable tourist trade, but there's a lot of times where they've just got to survive off the locals. So, I think that's probably, for me, the future. I don't know if you're going to see too many buyouts. If anyone's listening to this thinking they're going to grow a brand and get it bought out, then I'd probably try and find another business strategy. I'm sure there will be one or two more, but I don't think anyone's going to get super rich out of craft beer. Maybe if you wanted to open a chain of brew pubs in the suburbs, maybe you can become a mogul. But I think if you just want to make a nice, tidy, honest living, do something you love, get free beer, it's probably not a bad industry. Yeah, as far as beer trends, I'm not really sure. I think as far as real breakthrough beer trends, I don't know. The market's sort of fragmented so much now. I think the trends are going to be, the things are going to be a little bit smaller. I don't know what's going to break out next. At Ballistic, they were pretty keen on hazy pale ale. So a hazy beer, really hoppy, 4.2% or whatever, 4.6%, like Hawaiian haze. It was kind of for people that have cut their teeth on stone and wood, it's like the grown up brother kind of thing. I think there's a bit of a market for that as people progress through the beer styles and their palates develop. Sours, I don't know, have sort of flattened out for me a little bit. I think there's always going to be a market for it, but I don't know if it's going to be that massive. One that I've been watching in the US is low-calorie IPAs. So, low-cal, low-carb IPA, they're usually around 4%. Got about 4 grams of carbs and under 100 calories. That seems to be a big market in the US. Seltzers are kind of trying to fill that here, but seltzers are a bit more lolly water and maybe a bit more sort of female targeted, I feel. I don't know about low alcohol beer. It's something that everybody's talking about, but I'm not too sure how it's going to go in Australia. There's a fair few kind of stereotypes you got to bust down before that. And look, I think you're not drinking for a number of reasons. One of them might be that you just can't handle alcohol, or you're a dickhead when you drink. The other might be that you're health conscious. If you're health conscious, I think actually the lower calorie, lower carb beers are probably more, because a low alcohol beer can have a lot of residual sugars. And in the same way, no alcohol beers actually have a reasonable amount of residual sugars as well. So from a pure calorie point of view, I'd rather just have full strength and drink less and keep my calories in check that way. But look, I don't know. I'm not an expert in whatever generation they are. People that are 18 to 25 now, maybe low alcohol and no alcohol is the thing that's going to take off with that market. I'm not sure. I think you're going to see a lot more barrel-aged beers. There's a lot more breweries getting into it. And I think it's something small breweries can do really well. I love the business model for a barrel-aged beer and blender. So I think it's what actually Dollar Bill do, and I think it's what Wildflower do as well. They just get someone else to make their wort, and then they truck it in an IBC. Obviously, it's all sanitized. And then they put it in barrels or fermenters and then add their own yeast. So they don't even buy a brewery. They just buy the fermenters, and then they contract brew the wort, and then they ferment it themselves and then blend it and all that. So that's a really interesting model if you're into that. I mean, it's a niche market, so I don't know how much you're going to sell, and you've got to be bloody good at it, because you do tip a lot of beer down the sink, because barrels are a bit more temperamental. But yeah, that's something that I can see happening. And then the mainstream trend, I reckon, is just going to be craft, local, crisp lagers. If you listen to Brews News, that's what they talk about. But I actually think you look at what a lot of brewers drink when they knock off, it's not a double NEPA, it's a whatever their Pilsner or lager is, because it goes back to drinking for refreshment. And I think that's probably
drinkability.
And that's a trend that I think is coming back. It's coming back in the US. It'll come back over here. It's like all things. Everyone discovered hops, and then they push it as far as they possibly can. And then they come back to what beer is all about, which is about having a drink with your friends, enjoying it, and having a couple and not killing your palate, So that's kind of trend-wise. Holding back the industry, I'm not too sure, to be honest with you. I think government regulations have always been there. Excise has always been there. They're going to relax all that sort of stuff soon to some degree in most markets. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't think beer tap contracts are holding back the industry that much. A lot of publicans are starting to get wise to what they are and how they work. So I'm not really that pessimistic about that. Probably the big thing, I reckon, especially for new people starting out, is I think what could potentially hold back the industry is quality of product, quality of packaging, a lot of new entrants and people not spending that time on nailing the quality. And there's unfortunately still a lot of pretty average beer out there, and it's even more average when it's packed in a can and shipped around the place. So that's probably the big thing. One of the big things for people listening is if you're opening in a place where people don't get craft beer, you're basically an ambassador for craft beer. So they're going to try your beer. And if they don't like it, if it's not right, if it's got faults, they're going to think that's all craft beer, and that is actually going to damage the industry. So, if anybody's thinking of starting up and they're not 100% confident of their capability and the quality, and that is everything from brewing techniques, water quality, sanitation, everything like that, then join up someone like Hendo, Rockstar Brewing, or go and do the TAFE course or whatever and really get educated on that, and don't put out shit beer, because 10 years ago you probably could have got away with it, but now I think people are just way too educated, and you've got too much competition that if you don't put out beer that's good, then the home brewers and those people you're trying to engage as a community are just going to thumb their nose at what you do and shit can your beer and not come. So, yeah, I think that's probably the biggest one for me as far as holding things back.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that about the training aspect and the quality of beer in the market. Neil Cameron bangs on about it, that, there's still a lot of breweries out there that are, to put it politely, well, not politely, a lot of people producing a lot of shit beer, and it does deter the typical 4X or to his new mainstream tap drinkers to wanting to come across the other side of the pond when it comes to the craft beers that are on tap. And if they have a shit one, you've probably lost them forever. And that's something that I've actually taken up on myself after talking to Neil Cameron and even Hendo as well. He's a big advocate for training in the industry, and I think it's definitely worth people to look into the training aspect, and because one thing that Hendo says is you're a food manufacturer essentially, and there's got to be a level of quality, and people are taking your word for the amount of alcohol in your beer. And if you're not hitting your targets, and government's going around inspecting what your alcohol content is in your beer, and if you're outside that tolerance, then you could be up shit creek if the bloke has a car accident thinking he was under the limit because he only had 2 beers. So, but it's definitely opened my eye, that training aspect.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a huge point. I think, like I said, 10 years ago, your beer could have its faults and your marketing could be a bit shit, but now you've got to come out all guns blazing. Otherwise, you just, you can't set anything up for under $300,000. So it's a big investment for a lot of people, and I wouldn't want to see anybody waste that investment. So it's worthwhile delaying your project or spending a bit of extra money to get educated. To kind of, dodge a few of those pitfalls. In the same way, it's worthwhile paying a graphic designer or someone in marketing if you don't know really what you're doing in that space, it's the same thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, just coming to the end, Wade, and I really do appreciate you spending, well over an hour with us, mate. And I just thought I'd leave it with any closing thoughts or advice you'd like to leave our listeners with on the marketing aspect, or even just general brewery building and brewery operating side of things.
Yeah, look, pretty much covered everything. I mean, I think that, as I said, just don't leave marketing as an afterthought, and I guess the key to marketing really is putting the customer center of everything that you do. Opening a business is not about like your ego, it's about your customers, because if it's not about your customers, they'll work that out real quick and they won't come, and then you may as well have just kept on brewing in your shed and being happy and not having debt.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I know that you're no longer with Ballistic. You've moved into a different journey in your career, but anything you'd like to mention while we've got you on here about maybe people can reach out to you for some advice, anything like that?
Yeah, I'm more than happy for people to reach out for advice, and if it's just small stuff, then buy me a beer if you see me at a festival. If it's bigger stuff, then, maybe there's something we can work on together. The one thing I would like to give a shout out to is my brother's actually looking at opening a brewery with a tap room in Peakhurst in Sydney called Social
right.
Brewers. So if anyone gets a chance to check that out, I think he's going to try and open sort of mid next year or early sort of first quarter next year. So, I'm giving him a bit of advice, but he's not really listening too much. But anyway, we'll see.
Well, why would he?
If you get a chance.
He's got someone, the amount of...
brothers don't listen.
Mate, it's, I wish even a father or brother, who could share this, or I'll be bloody chewing at the bit to sort of, know what, has been in your head in terms of brewery planning and opening. So he should be listening. Maybe he'll just listen to the podcast.
He is listening, but I tried to talk him out of it actually, but probably stubborn like me too.
Oh, right.
I put him onto this podcast too, so he'll be an avid listener, I'm sure.
Oh, excellent. Well, I appreciate that, mate. And I'll leave it at that, Wade, and appreciate you once again sharing some time and all your insights. I think people will take a lot from that in terms of the marketing aspect. And once again, thanks for coming on, Wade.
Too easy. Thanks and good luck, everybody. Enjoy the journey, and happy to help.
Thanks, buddy. Thanks for listening to the Build Me a Brewery podcast. That was part 1 of the marketing, design and beer media segment. Part 2 of the segment, I chat with Adam Mumford from Men at Work agency to discuss how his firm assists businesses and breweries with their marketing and brand development. As always, if you are liking the podcast so far and find the content useful, please give us a follow and rating on whatever platform you're listening on. Also, follow us on all our social media handles, as well as visiting our website, www.buildmeabrewery.com.au, and much more complimentary content will be coming your way if you sign up to our mailing list. I'm Chris Hayton, your host, and this is the Build Me a Brewery podcast.